So, as you obviously know, I'm in Florida and we just had Hurricane Milton. And we did not lose power at our house. And thoughts are with everybody who's going through some stuff. But I was reading an article about the impacts of Milton. And there was a paragraph that has stuck with me for several days now. It was about some Tampa residents who were weathering out the storm. And they were in a multi story building. And so they were just going to go up to a higher story and wait it out there. And their plan was to inflate inflatable mattresses in their hallway, sip some Modelo, and watch Tampa Bay Rays baseball. And I couldn't get this paragraph out of my head because I'm like, now I understand why you're dumb enough to try and weather out the storm. We are 2 weeks into the MLB playoffs. The Tampa Bay Rays are not in them. So if your plan is to watch Tampa Bay Rays baseball during this hurricane that just passed through yesterday, I can see why you're also making other bigger, stupid decisions. So thoughts and prayers to those who were smart enough to leave, that needed to, that were in those kind of zones. Hope everybody's doing okay. A lot of impacts around here from like tornadoes and stuff. But I think there's definitely some people who fooled around and found out, as I say to my kids.
Well, hey, climate change is real, people, and it's time to start believing. So
Milton just wants his stapler back.
Yes, he does.
Welcome back to the Working on the Dad Pod. I'm Alex. With me, as always, my co-host Ethan. And today we're working on made-up rules. So these are some of the things that we find as parents that we were told either before we became parents, just in the general zeitgeist, or if it's something that we've been told since we became parents, these kind of hard and fast rules that you have to do that we disagree with. I think this episode's different than our hot takes episode because I don't think, at least on my list, we're just going to kind of go back and forth and discuss them. But I don't think on my list, any of these things are like, I have a problem if you do it, or I'm staunchly against this. It's just like, I don't think it needs to be this concrete,
right?
Of a yes or no. Obviously, before that, we'll have story time. After that, we'll have working on the dad bod. And before we get all into all of that, make sure you head to workingonthedadpod.com where you can find all of our socials, as well as a link to our YouTube channel. We're live on YouTube every Thursday night. Not live. We're on YouTube every Thursday night after we record this. At some point, we might go live when we've had enough sleep to correctly nail this part of the episode. But
sure.
Yeah. Make sure you subscribe on all podcast platforms. And thanks for joining us. And just a quick note. Our last episode was about dealing with disasters. Mentioned in the open there, the hurricane that's come through. We didn't record last week, and we didn't post anything on social media about it, really. We just kind of left everybody hanging. And so our millions of fans, really both of our dads, texted us, where's my podcast episode? And so sorry about that. Ethan was dealing with his mold disaster that he had talked about and was like, hey man, I probably can't record until 10 o'clock. I don't actually to this day know exactly what he was doing that necessitated him doing it at 9 p.m., but I couldn't stay up that late. So we just said, yeah, we've got a half-baked idea for an episode and you've got an emergency to deal with. And so here we are a week later with the same half-baked idea. We're ready to bring it to you.
Hey, listen, we might have only gotten 2 texts, but think about all the texts from our millions of watchers and followers that our dads got that they consolidated on our behalf. That's all I'm going to say. And then, I definitely spoke way too soon 2 weeks ago when I said the mold was under control. Very much not under control. And just obviously the housework I'm dealing with is manageable in comparison to what's going on around the country in the aftermath of Helene and Milton. It is still disruptive to my life, and I'm not going to bore any of you with the details. But luckily, we caught it when we did, and hopefully it won't get even worse. So that is where I am at there. But since I'm already speaking, I'll just go right into story time. So yesterday was my birthday, October 9th. I turned 36 years old. I find every day after 30 to be a gift. So yes, I feel like I'm on borrowed time. My body does. And then so starting on October 1st, my older daughter woke me up in the morning after she got out of bed. She woke up before me, ran into my room and said, "Daddy, it's your birthday." And I said, "Sweetheart, it's October, but my birthday is October 9th. My birthday is not for 8 days." I would say 6 of the next 7 days, my daughter woke up, ran into my room and said, "Daddy, it's your birthday." Yesterday, on my birthday, my daughter runs into my room and she goes, "Daddy, I have to poop." And I say, "All right, leave my door open, and if you need help wiping, call out." Goes. I say, "Okay, well, that was nice." And then she comes back and goes, "Happy birthday, Daddy." And yeah, I just thought that was very funny. She definitely gave all her best performances in the 8 dress rehearsals. And then yeah, that's that showtime. She just didn't get it done. So.
Like the Adam Sandler movie Big Daddy, we wasted the good surprise on you kind of thing, except she wasted all the good ones in earlier October.
Yeah.
Well, happy birthday, man.
Thanks.
Glad you had a good day. Or hope you had a good day. It
I had a great day.
Started with some crap, but hopefully it was all uphill from there.
Yeah. I took a half day from work. I then went golfing with a friend. We then had Indian food for dinner, and my wife made cheesecake, but she made them in little cupcake tins for portion control purposes. So I didn't overeat the cheesecake. No, I overate the Indian food like a good birthday boy, and then I had slightly too much cheesecake, but I didn't overeat cheesecake. Yeah,
there you go. Good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Well, mine is, my story this week is just sort of how my kids have been absolute troopers this week, because it's been a weird week, with Hurricane Milton coming through. But even before that, I guess sort of right before it, my wife flew out on Wednesday morning for LA. She's going to a work conference out there. And so braved the hurricane solo. And I say braved. Again, we didn't lose power. I thought we would. About 1 in 5 people in our county did. So consider ourselves, lucky to be in the majority there, because that was definitely not something that I was looking forward to with the kids. But it basically meant that on Monday, they said, "Hey, we're going to have school on Tuesday, but all after school is closed." And the YMCA, where we send our daughter after school, is like, "Hey, we're going to close the facility at 2:00. And it felt kind of premature, but the storm ended up slowing down, and like Tuesday was way too early, but they'd already made the call, so you can't do anything about it. School's going to be closed on Wednesday. School's going to be closed on Thursday. Okay, fine. I can deal with that. And then like on Tuesday night, they're like, "We're going to use some of the schools as shelters. So now school's closed on Friday. We'll see you guys Monday." And yeah, so that, it's kind of put a wrinkle into the week, right? Because thankfully, my mom also did not lose power. Roughly around 9:15, 9:30 this morning, storm had passed, sun was coming out. There were still probably 20, 25 mile per hour wind gusts going on, but totally drivable weather. So I was able to drive the kids over to my mom's, get in a full work day. And I was able to do that as well, or able to do that yesterday, and then I was able to do that again today, thankfully, because she had power. But my daughter was really struggling with this. She's struggling with the idea of so much change. She's used to a routine, right? She's used to getting up, going to school, maybe going to dance practice, but going to the Y, doing all these things. And without those constraints, those rules of kind of like, hey, yeah, like we're just kind of gonna chill. And I definitely, when they got home from my mom's yesterday, was like, yeah, you can watch some TV because the power might go out at any moment. And then I'm like, oh, it was the hurricane. Kids, no more TV. And then it just never went out. And I was like, okay, it's bedtime. And they did it. And, it was way more screen time than I would ever give them. But they were happy. It allowed me to like finish up hurricane prep that I didn't end up needing to do, but glad to have done it. So just shout out to my kids for being absolute troopers. They've been going with the flow pretty well. And I have just tried to, I've been an anxious mess up until, I woke up this morning and realized, we had a tree split in half way in the back of our yard. A gate came off its hinge. That's about it, and I was just trying my best not to relay that anxiety onto my kids. Sure. And so kind of had a goofy, silly time, and they've rolled with it. And I've tried not to take things too seriously with them and cut them a little slack. And so, yeah, we're doing pretty well.
Cool. Well, that's good. I'm glad you guys are, for the most part, doing okay in this situation. And you mentioned school on Monday. Monday is Florida, or is your county that there's no school? Well, I mean, there is school.
Yeah, they already sent out a text that's saying they're going to have school on Monday.
Okay, because in Maryland, most schools are closed for what is still recognized as Columbus Day. Some might refer to it as Indigenous Peoples Day.
Yeah, no.
All right.
Cool. Nope. We have got, tons and tons of land and lakes and counties named after various tribes and Indigenous peoples, but now everything's open on Monday. So
I feel like we had school off on Columbus Day in college. You know what? No, we did, but they just called it fall recess. That was that random 3-day weekend. Now I remember.
I will say this though. I will say this. They have a teacher work day every year on Rosh Hashanah. So they are taking taking off for holidays that maybe aren't universally taken off. Like I know when I was growing up, kids would get off that were Jewish, and it could be an excused absence, right? Because it's a religious holiday, but it would just be like, there's a few less seats in the class filled today,
right?
Kind of thing. So, but every year, which is nice because it means it's not an extra day off for like my son because he's going to a Jewish daycare versus my daughter. It's just a teacher work day and everybody's off, and so we can plan around it pretty easy.
I got to say this: I am very happy as a Jewish person that Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, when they fall on weekdays, are usually given off at schools in most states, or at least the states I've lived in. Never mind, I'm not going to say most states, the states I've lived in. However, what I will say is I was also really, really happy that my kids' daycare was not closed on Rosh Hashanah. So I didn't have them home with me all day, which was nice. So nice. Yeah, I was just able to worked out. I liked the situation I was in. But let's get into these made up rules. The idea that came to me in a dream. I texted you and then forgot all of the things. But I will start with the one that I get a lot of from older generations of parents. Okay. And this is as somebody who's got not one, but 2 daughters. You have to brush your kids' hair every day. Is a very old-timey belief that only straight hair is beautiful, and that if you don't brush curly or wavy hair, that young girls will look disheveled or dirty. And basic hair care over the years has taught us that when you have wavy or curly hair and it's dry, you don't brush it, because that's what actually makes it worse. So there are multiple generations of parents who will say, "Oh, you didn't brush her hair," for either one of my daughters. And I kind of just want to say, you didn't brush that obnoxious look off your face, but I'm not going to tell you that. So I don't know. Have you ever gotten that one with your daughter, or does your daughter have naturally straight hair and it's never come up?
We brush my daughter's hair every day. It is not like, there are times where she has absolutely left the house looking disheveled and I don't care. And it's never been for that reason. It's that my wife has pretty fine hair and my daughter has sort of my waviness, which is not the same as yours, but the fineness of my wife. And if we don't brush it every day, it gets insanely tangled. And then it becomes a tear factory when we do brush it. And so it is more of a maintenance protocol to keep the tangles under control more than it is a respectability presentation kind of thing. That said, if it was just a presentation thing, I don't think we'd have to, like, my daughter's old enough now and wants to do everything herself now. She brushes her own hair for the most part and does a good job at it. And she cares so much about her appearance, like through nothing that I think my wife or I have like imitated to her. Like, I'm like, I spend half of my work days in gym shorts and like throw on a sweater for Zoom meetings. Like,
Same.
like, you know, and my wife half the time is dressed in workout clothes because she's a personal trainer. And so I don't know where she necessarily gets it from, but she cares so much about her appearance that it's like she specifically picks out which hair accessories she's going to wear with each outfit to match appropriately on Sunday nights for the whole week. So it's, you know,
so,
and then, yeah.
So is that when you brush her hair every day, is it dry or wet?
Usually dry, because we don't wash her hair every single day. You know, like if she does something dirty, sweaty, hot, yeah. But like, yeah, it's more just brushing it dry.
So the reason I only ask that is because our daughters shower at night. I usually throw on a swimsuit, jump in there with them. I make sure to condition both their hair every day to avoid the knots. I don't, and the tangliness. I don't necessarily shampoo it every day, but every day when they get out of the shower, yeah, we brush it straight. For our older one, because it's super long, we'll braid it to avoid the tangles. But it's the dry hair where people seem to think that if you don't brush a girl's hair every morning, they don't understand how wavy hair works. And I just think it's very much a Marsha Brady syndrome that we just need to get rid of.
Yeah, I think this is as much a hair type issue as it is, you know, again, my wife understands more about the fine hair that she and my daughter share.
So,
you know, I let her take the wheel on that. But like, we don't brush her hair wet. If she's going in the bath or the shower and washing her hair, we brush it before dry because it gets more tangly when it's wet, even conditioned. So it's
interesting.
I don't know, but our sole goal is as few tears as possible. And that's why my daughter self-taught herself to brush her hair fairly rapidly, because she was like, I want control of the process. And then kind of like brushing teeth, we're just doing spot checks to make sure she got it all.
Gotcha. Cool. All right. Well, that was the first one that actually inspired this idea. What you got?
Mine is that kids should always behave in public. All right. And this one's a nuanced take. I think like the last one, I think like all of these are going to be, but I grew up with this idea that kids need to behave in a restaurant or something like that. And if they don't behave, you should absolutely remove yourself from the restaurant or profusely apologize or have some sense of embarrassment. And I think there's levels to it. Like, I don't think kids
Sure.
should be running around touching other people's tables and stuff. But I think the idea that kids are loud or whatever, or a little boisterous at the table is to be expected. They are kids. And I also don't think that it's a rational thing to expect families to stay home. I think there are times and places, and I don't think this applies to every restaurant. If you're taking kids that can't handle themselves at like a fine dining restaurant, you probably should. And I've also got questions about wasting that kind of money on such crappy palettes. That's a whole
Sure.
different thing. But if you're at like
Agreed.
Chili's or something, just to sort of level set what we're talking about, if you're at Chili's or Olive Garden, and maybe these are terrible examples because they have the tablets on the table, but if you're at one of those types of restaurants, like, I think it's okay for kids to be loud. And I think if you're at an Applebee's, a Chili's, an Olive Garden, and you're glaring over at kids, like, how is this kid making? Go to a fine dining restaurant. Go to somewhere that has different expectations. But my 2 cents is that, this idea that kids should behave in public and you should remove them from the situation and punish yourself every single time they make a little bit too much noise is ludicrous.
Couldn't agree more. My only caveat is when it's not just they're being loud and having too much fun, it's when they're being loud and throwing a tantrum that is ruining the time of myself or like my wife, and it's just kind of like, let's just go. Because
I think that,
fun.
I think there is a strategy there as well in like removing the kid from the restaurant for their benefit.
Sure.
And I think that's a different mindset than for, I'm disturbing everybody else. Like, if
couldn't
you're
care about
removing
anybody
them
else
for the intention of like, I'm going to change your scenery so it kind of shocks your system and maybe snaps you out of this, mental state that you're in, I think that's fair game. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad strategy. But yeah, I mean, if it's ruining your experience, like, I'm not sitting there like a drone going, I'm immune to this. I'm going to enjoy my dinner. These little hooligans, whatever. Like, no. Yeah, we wrap up quickly, especially, with the younger kids when they're toddlers and they're clearly getting tired. And you can tell that it's like, okay, we need to get home because there's half of this is a concern that homeboy is going to fall asleep in the car on the way home. So we should probably make moves because it's getting a little late or something. Yeah.
All right. I think for the most part or actually for the entire part, we're in agreement there. Another one that I have, and I think there's too much judgment on the rules of bedtime and staying out late. Now, my wife and I, we tend to stick to a relatively standard bedtime of we get the shower and the bedtime process started around 7 to 7:30, and then ideally we're out of the girls' rooms and have said goodnight between 8 and 8:30. We have exceptions, when we go to my mother-in-law's or my sister-in-law's or anywhere, frankly, for holidays, parties, special exceptions to the rule. We're all having a great time. Nobody wants to leave. The girls go to sleep a little late. Whatever. We will make do. That said, and I will say I am somewhat guilty of this myself. 2 weeks ago, when Miami played Virginia Tech, I went out to a bar with a couple friends, and we're watching the game. And around 10:30, two people walked in with their 3-year-old son in pajamas at the table next to us. Now, I had no problem with that kid being next to us at a bar. I had no problem with them taking their kid to a sports bar to enjoy the game. Did I find it slightly weird that they showed up at 10:30 and then didn't leave at 10:30? Sure. Did I say anything? No, it's none of my business. I am simply just saying that I think parents know their kids. Ideally, they know how much sleep their kids need versus how much they want their kids to sleep. And I don't think there's anything wrong with extending a good time. Again, would I start the good time at 10:30 if it were entirely up to me? No. But I would be lying if I said I haven't stayed out with my kids someplace close to, if not past 10 o'clock, just because it just happened to be that way. So that one's my thought there.
Yeah, I mean, this one was on my list, and once again,
Okay.
I think we're in pretty good agreement. You know, I don't know if 10 o'clock's ever happened. Usually, and frankly, you know, just different living situations. We're driving most places. We don't have the public transit you do in the DC area. So like if we leave somewhere, the kids are probably going to fall asleep in the car if it's
Mhm.
that kind of hour. It's happened, and it definitely happens on special occasions. You know, I can think of one year visiting my in-laws for the summer and staying out for a fireworks display on 4th of July. I can think of an example tonight, right? Tonight I did not have my dinner stuff together. I had all the ingredients to make chicken shawarma, and at like 5:45 I opened up the recipe, and remembered that it needs to marinate for a minimum of 1 hour. And I had not started any of that. And so we're like, and then it's like 40 minutes in the oven. So I'm like, the math isn't mathing here.
Yeah.
So I ended up having to call about a dozen places, sort of asking the kids what they wanted and figuring out what was open because of the hurricane, right? A lot of
Sure.
restaurants didn't open up today or planned to be closed. And so we ended up getting some pub subs, bringing them back here. And instead of starting story time at 7:45, we were starting at 8. But I made a decision as we were eating dinner and sort of getting things. I was like, okay, I can set my normal timers to keep us on
Mhm.
schedule and start being the guy that's hustling them and going, let's go, let's go, let's go. Or I can be chill about this, watch it, and just like get bedtime to happen without fights, without arguments, without tears.
Yep.
And that's probably gonna be much better for me. And so I made that
Sure.
decision. I'm not saying I'd make that decision every time I had this goof, but they don't have
Mhm.
school tomorrow, right?
Right. Exactly.
They don't have to get up for any particular reason. I can get them both to the same place at the same time. Gym's open tomorrow. We're going to go there, and my mother-in-law is going to pick them up a little bit, you know, after the start of my work day. I don't have a heavy meeting day. It's very casual. All these calculations going on in my head. And I'm like, what is 15 minutes? 15 minutes is 15 minutes. My daughter's got
Mhm.
it in really good. You know, they have an alarm clock changes colors. I think I've mentioned that before. So it's not,
Yeah.
doesn't make any sound. She'll sleep right through it. So, you know, today she woke up at 7 because again, we had nowhere to be instead of her normal 6:30. So, you know, it's just, it's not a huge
Yeah.
concern on my part, but I'm right there with you. I think routine is good. I think routine is valuable, but I think if you're too rigid about it, you can miss out on some good moments. I'm not saying pub subs are the same as, you know, going to a ball game or fireworks or something like that, but you know,
Sure.
you can definitely miss out on life if you're going to be like, we need to be home at this time every single night, no matter the occasion or circumstance.
Right. Right.
All right.
100%.
So I'm looking at my list here, and I'm actually gonna go back to what you said at the beginning of yours to pick one off of my list.
Okay.
Hard and fast rules. You know your child best. I disagree with this as a rule. I think, and you've mentioned this before, so I don't think you'll disagree with me, that sometimes parents can be too close to the situation. That it's not
Sure.
even knowing your child best or anything like that. It's simply like you're so close to the situation that you can't see what's wrong,
Right.
right? You know, maybe with their behavior or their patterns or whatever, with medical advice. And I think that's not to say, oh, you always have to listen to somebody else in all those
Right.
situations. But I also think you shouldn't just go, I know my kid. And I think this comes down to like some of the big pillar stuff, medical, educational, developmental, like those kinds of things that like you should take feedback, be open to it and listen to it and use it in your evaluations. If the teacher's saying we've got a behavior problem,
Mhm.
don't throw it out the window because you know your kid. As we've both talked about, and there are studies that have talked about these kind of phenomena, kids can act differently in a social setting of a classroom than they act in the home, where they feel more comfortable, or they feel different, or authority is regulated differently, consequences are different, whatever. So
Right.
you cannot always judge your experience with your child around it. Same goes with medical stuff of like, oh yeah, like we have examples of, like, I've mentioned this, where my daughter gets ear infections from time to time, and we really, really try to avoid antibiotics. We talk that over at urgent care with somebody giving us the diagnosis, help
Right.
their judgment of this, of like, what's the severity here? Let's get some actual numbers, not from our at-home thermometer, but from yours that hopefully you're calibrating a little bit better. Let's see how this thing's progressing. Let's look at some of the other symptoms. If we need the antibiotics, we will use them. But also, Doc, what do you think if we didn't use the antibiotics, because she usually gets a UTI after taking antibiotics for an ear infection? Okay, let's evaluate that in our judgment. Do we know something about our daughter that maybe isn't showing up on her medical chart? Absolutely. Does that mean that that's the blanket statement we should ride with? Oh, we have an otoscope. My wife can look at my daughter's ear and say there's an ear infection there, but that doesn't mean we're going, oh, there's an ear infection, she's good.
Right.
Right. So it's kind of that blend.
I feel you. And for the most part, yeah, like I do agree with you. I think where what I said when I said that was more less about the big things like you said,
Oh, I was
medical,
just using it as
school.
transition, not
Oh
as
yeah.
like a
Oh okay.
sparring point.
Oh yeah, no. But just to clarify, my take's more about like ideally, again, the parents know how much sleep your particular kid roughly needs to function. You know how many good meals they actually have in a day. You know, sometimes our kids don't have a good lunch at school. They leave most of it over. And the teachers, you know, they'll apologize at the end of the day and they'll be like, she didn't eat her lunch. Like, I'm really sorry. And I'll be like, oh, yeah, no, they had 2 waffles and cereal this morning. You know, they were really hungry in the morning.
Yeah.
And tonight's pancake night. Did I plan that great? No, but they're going to eat their calories and it's going to be fine. They're going to be full. So it's more stuff like that I was talking about. But yeah, no, I definitely have dealt with my fair share of parents who are too close to the situation and can't really see what's going on. But that is also why whenever I'm handed an incident report at school for either girl, my first question is, were they the instigator? Did they do this? Because I want to be open to the idea that my perfect little angels are not perfect little angels. And for my younger one, she has definitely been the instigator multiple times. My older one, she's a goody two shoes. So, but yeah. All right. Looking at my list, I kind of only want to do one more of mine because the other one kind of feeds into it. Actually, no, I'm sorry. I've got, yeah. I'm going to just stop talking and just say the one I wanted to say. Okay.
Go for it. That's a wonderful
Thank
idea.
you. Yeah. Thank you. Weather and clothing. Now, I don't know if you deal with this much in Florida because you only have delightful and unbearable there, but we have seasons here. But we also have regular body temperatures. For example, I tend to run warmer and it has to be really, really cold for me to add some layers. My wife always runs colder and she will grab a sweatshirt when we're going out for a walk in 90-degree summer. And I look at her like she's a psychopath, but she knows her body better than I do. So she takes a sweater. I think back very, very to a particular memory. It was pre-COVID, and I wanted to surprise my wife at work with our then only child, who was a few months old, and it was January in DC. Now, was this a snowy January day? No, this was a high 50s day. Wasn't too sunny, but I had my daughter in the carrier, so she had my body heat, and I was wearing a jacket that while we were outside, I didn't zip up, but I hugged around her. We are at
Sure.
the metro. We are getting ready to get on the train, and a woman walks by and goes, "You should put a jacket on her because it's under 60 degrees." And I kind of just looked at her and said, "Go away." Because I didn't need to explain my daughter's body temperature to her. I didn't need to point out to her that she was wearing a jacket because I had a jacket on over her. And again, body heat to body heat, carrier, it's just kind of, you don't know what we're feeling here. Now, I think it's ridiculous if you have a rule for other people that if it's a certain degree or temperature in the day, that you either need this clothing or that clothing. You can have that rule for yourself, but don't tell me how to dress my kids if you don't know how my kids tolerate heat or cold. That's all.
Yeah, no, I agree with this. We don't have the seasons, but we
Mhm.
do have the judgment, right?
Yes.
Of the most like temperature irregular things, right? And I remember specifically when my daughter, especially, was a baby. We'd
Hmm.
be carrying her around, and we did a lot of carrying her around in the car seat, right? Especially when she was
Hmm.
younger. And my wife used to work at a fitness studio that was heavily female. And we walk in the door. I bring her in because I'm bringing her to my wife for some reason. I don't know. There's a lady
Hmm.
there, and she sees that my daughter does not have on socks. She's like
Socks is a
4
huge
months
one.
old. Whatever.
Yeah.
She's like, "Oh no, you don't have socks. Your feet are gonna get cold." And I looked at her, and I didn't. There was no like go away, animosity in my voice. It was just more stunned, like it's 90 degrees outside. Like I'm wearing flip flops. You're not worried
Yeah.
about my feet? What are we doing
Yeah.
here? Like
How
you
dare
don't you
you?
don't care. Oh, you're too good for my feet. Like that's
Yeah.
kind of how I felt because I was like, what does she need socks for? And she goes, like, and I was just sort of like, it's 90 degrees outside. And it was one of those where she goes, well, she needs her feet. And I'm like, yeah, listen, I get it. Like, babies don't have the same temperature regulation as adults. But at the same time, like, one of these old wives' tales that's perpetuated through the decades is the idea that heat leaves your body faster through your feet or your head or your hands as some way to
Hmm.
convince people to wear hats and socks
Hmm.
and gloves when it's cold weather. Like that actually matters. I'm like, that is not scientifically accurate. And more
Right.
important, she was in a onesie that exposed her entire thigh. So putting some little socks on her is not going to do some dramatic thing that was
Right.
going to shelter her from the nasty AC. And I'm like, I could step out on the sidewalk and she'd be back in 90 degrees. Like, I don't know. And then you'd probably be like, she's so hot. What are you doing? Like you can't win
Right.
sometimes with the temperature thing. It's like bundle them up, but don't get them too hot. And yeah, I'm like,
Yeah.
we're fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Do you have another
So
one you want to hit?
yeah,
Yeah.
I'll do one more, and then we can get to working on the dad bod. But I'm going to save the my spiciest one, I think, for last here.
Ooh.
So I think this one is a little bit more out there, a little less
Okay.
concrete, but there was an idea that I feel like I've seen perpetuated in media. And again, this isn't a hot take that is wrong if you do it, but I don't think it has to be a rule that you love
Hmm.
your kids more than you love your partner. There's got to be kids first, then your partner. Again, there's nothing wrong with that. I don't share that mentality. My wife and I do not share that mentality. And I also understand that this is sort of a vaguer concept because you really can't control how much love and affection you have for any one given person compared to another. But I think the rule that you have to, because it's vague and you can't control it, you have to somehow direct this vague, uncontrollable thing to this person. My wife and I's philosophy is if we love each other more than anything, then we're going to be a strong unit and we're going to be good parents. And they're going to see the love. They're going to get emulated the love. And this doesn't mean we're cold to our children, but it just means like my daughter has straight up asked us, who do you love more? Right. You know, baiting, maybe just asking, curious, wanting validation, whatever it is. My wife and I both give the same answer. Boom. And we say why. And we try to say it in a logical way that'll make sense to a 5-year-old. I didn't get to choose my mom. I didn't get to choose my dad. I don't get to choose my kids. You know, if you adopt, sure, that's different. But if you have biological children, then no, you don't get to choose your kids. The only member of my family that I got to choose was this person. I chose this person to go through more of my life with, live with, cohabitate with, than I will with my parents or my kids, maybe combined. So therefore, yes, they come first for those reasons. And if you don't agree with that philosophy in your home, fine. Again, this is not a judgment or a take that's like, I think this is how it has to be. But I also think that I have heard a lot of, you have to love your kids more than anything because they count on you and rely on you. And I think those things are mutually exclusive, that you can show love to your kids, you can give love to your kids, you care about them, they can rely on you, and they do not have to be the person that you love the most in the world for any of those things to happen.
So I have never actually heard, and maybe I just ignored it, but I've never been told you have to love your kids more than you love your partner. That is not I didn't actually think of that as a rule. So that one, that was the look on my face. I was a little.
I get you. I've definitely heard it presented as a, you are wrong if you don't do it this way.
Interesting. So I will actually say that I weirdly, and this is very strange, but of the big relationships in my life, my kids, my wife, my brother, my parents, I would actually say that the two I care about most because of, yeah, no, it's not you. The two I care about most are actually the two where I feel most responsible. What do I mean by that? Like, I am my daughter's father. So I believe that the relationship I have with them mostly falls on me to make good, because I'm older, I'm supposed to be wiser, and it is my responsibility to take care of them and make them happy. I feel, even though it doesn't really matter now because I'm 36 and he's 33, but I feel the same way about my relationship with my brother. So I would actually put the onus of importance of the relationship probably wrongfully at number 2 for me, because I feel that as his older brother, I was responsible for cultivating our relationship as well and ensuring that I always did what was best for him, set a good example. And, you know, there was a time when this wasn't the case, but there was a moment when I was like around 16 where I really felt responsible for how we were going to not love each other, but like each other. My wife and I feel that we are equal partners in our relationship. So I actually rank that number 3 in terms of the onus of my responsibility, because I feel like equal responsibility, and it shouldn't always be on me and it shouldn't always be on her to ensure that the relationship is thriving and at its best. It's equally on both of us. And sometimes, you go back and forth, you sway, but I know that I'm not 100%, that it's not 100% on me. And that, I think, is just a mindset. And then, of course, like, it's entirely up to my parents to make sure I still like them because I'm their kid. So
I disagree with anything you've said.
yeah,
So
right.
where you sort of push back on the premise of mine, I'm going to push back a little bit on the premise of yours. That
Sure.
at no point did you say love.
Yes, that's
So
true.
you're talking about onus of responsibility, which I think can definitely be distinct. But here's where I'd also push back. How many of these relationships did you go through a whole many $1,000 ceremony, maybe with a religious figure up at the front, where you pledged your responsibility in the relationship in front of all your friends and family?
Well,
Don't tell me what you did that with your brother, because
yeah, no, we took a brother oath. No, yeah, no, I guess that's
no,
a
but
good point.
I hear what you're saying, but I think that's that, but that's almost it almost sort of validates my point that it's not about the responsibility for owning the relationship, because I agree with that, in regards to the children, because I firmly believe my responsibility is like, they don't owe me anything. I chose to bring them into this world.
Right.
I owe them my best as a father. But this is more about the love and the strength and the bond of us as a couple of his parents, because we're going to be together the longest, like cohabitating, right? Your parents are still your parents. My parents are still my parents, but like, we are independent creatures now, where, we talk, lean on them for advice, support, all that stuff, but it's not the same as it was. And the kids, you're going to have that same sort of shift in the relationship where they're going to become their own independent creatures, and your spouse is still going to be your spouse.
Yeah.
Or your partner is going to be your partner. Right. And so, yeah, I mean, that's sort of where I fall on that. But then again, if you don't think that's a rule, then of course you don't think it's a rule that has to be broken.
Yeah, no, again, I'm not saying I don't think it's a rule. I'm just saying I have never heard it presented as a rule.
Of course.
I've just simply heard it as a this is just kind of typical. Like, I've definitely been told you're going to love your kids more than anything. It's human nature, is like what I've been told. I didn't like, and I maybe that is a rule, but I always thought it was more of a physiological response to one's offspring that we all have as animals. That was
I think it is a physiological response to care about them, for sure. And I don't think it's wrong if your answer is your kids, and you don't have to have a reason to justify it to me, or you're feeling, not you, but anybody out there listening to this, you don't have to have a reason to justify it. If you ask my parents, they would say me. Fine, great. I love them for that. They also got divorced when I was like 4, and it's not shade at them, because I'm not somebody that believes that divorce is some bad thing. I think if a relationship's not working, that is like, and it's in your best interest, you should not spend the next 50 years suffering through that. So don't misread that. But also, like, from the time that I could sort of understand the concepts of what love really meant, past sort of what my 2.5-year-old says, of like feeling like a parrot sometimes when he's like, I love you, like, when I could understand it. Yeah, my parents weren't married to each other, so it wasn't like a concept that, and it's also not me really pushing back on it either. It's just sort of where we are. And but I have seen a lot of people that I think, based on that physiological response, but also based on everybody else telling them, right? I think this is where it sort of feels like a rule to me, is because so many people say that is what's going to happen, that therefore you expect it. And I think you're manifesting your reality in some cases where it's
Sure.
like, everybody tells me that this is going to become the most important person in my life. And then you think that almost into existence where that's what it becomes. Again, okay by me, but just not hard and fast necessarily.
Cool. All right. Well,
should we work on the dad bod?
Yeah, I need to do a much better job working on my dad bod. I'm 190.2, which is about a little under half a pound heavier than I was when we recorded 2 weeks ago. I'm in a vicious slump right now. I'm having a hard time. Just I just feel like I fell off a good wagon, and I need to get myself back on it. The definitely the mold situation in my house caused a little bit of stress eating. The aggressive rain we had last week made it so I didn't want to go running, and then having a birthday, and we actually didn't do the best job of cooking during the mold thing because one of the things we actually had to leave the house, so that was an extra night out at a restaurant.
Sure.
And I can tell you all of the reasons why I'm failing. Ultimately, the only excuse is that I'm a weak little bee, but I'm just in a slump right now, and I don't feel good about it. And hopefully, yesterday was my New Year's Day, so I'm hoping this year, well, calendar wise, I won't eat a lot of calories on Saturday because it is Yom Kippur. But
there
so hopefully starting
fasting. I was
actually
going to tell you, not specifically intermittent fasting or keto or anything, because I'm not huge into fad diets, right? I have my own philosophies about things and like healing relationships with food and yada, yada, yada. But at the same time, like on a very like biomechanical level, my 2 cents, I don't have any specific advice of what it should be, but like I'd change something up, just like if you did like a fad diet for like 3-4 weeks, you're not going to kill yourself. There's nothing wrong with it. Or something that it's like, maybe they're just like eating the exact same things and counting the calories and trying to get your run in so that you can meet your calories. If it's just not working long enough, do something different, change it back up, and then maybe come back to the thing you were doing, or maybe you stick with the thing. I saw on social media, a dad posted that, and I thought of you, and I should have tagged you, but I thought of you because he lost 20 pounds because he stopped fixing himself dinner. And I'm like, what? And you read more. He was eating dinner and he was clearing his kids' plates. And so he stopped fixing himself dinner and just cleared the plates, and then realized how many extra calories he had been consuming by being the garbage disposal of the family. So he just took on that role exclusively at dinner time and dropped 20 pounds in a couple months. And I was like, honestly, Ethan might could do that. I don't know.
That's no, that would have been helpful to share with me after you shared with me the all-time greatest Olive Garden never-ending pasta hero. That guy's my effing hero.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know what, for those of you who don't know,
Twitter, we'll do that.
Yeah, that was this video that Alex is going to share is a father at the Never-Ending Pasta Bowl whose, I believe, son is narrating what's happening, and it is one of the most magical experiences I have ever watched. As somebody who used to organize a Yom Kippur break fast with Never Ending Pasta Bowl in college, it was beautiful, and I'm almost in tears just how wonderful that was to watch him eat. So.
Guy was a machine, and like honestly, Joey Chestnut, Kobayashi-esque, but with nothing on the line.
Yeah,
no title,
just
no money,
pure happiness. Yeah.
Just joy for Never Ending Possible. So I'll try to share that video. But for me this week, I obviously didn't go to the gym today. Didn't go to the gym yesterday because of hurricane stuff. I'll be back tomorrow. But one thing I've been talking about, working on my mobility and my joints and just sort of the foundational movement patterns to make sure that as I keep lifting weights and exercising on a regular basis, like my knees don't start hurting and my low back and all these sort of old man injuries, that like my form and my body's right. And one of the things that I recently got that I'm really excited about is I got some barefoot shoes. And this isn't the old things that you used to see, like the Vibrams that have the toes. It's just they're sneakers, and they've got a wider toe box. They're by Zero Shoes. It's spelled with an X, Xero shoes, and they basically don't have an elevated heel. Most sneakers have a little bit, and they've got a wider toe box because a lot of times your toes get cramped up in there, and that's how you get bunions either on your big toe or your little toe. And I've got them on my little toe where like it bends in there and I can't even bend it out. So I'm excited about that. I just got them on Tuesday after the gym, so I haven't been able to test them out, but I'm excited I'm wearing them now, but they feel pretty good. And one of the interesting things is I can sort of feel my like foot muscles in a couple places like activating more as I'm just walking around in these shoes enough. So I'm like, could be pretty good, because I got this thing, and maybe I've said this on the podcast before, where my right foot is flatter than my left foot, to the point where it used to be like a half size bigger in shoes. And now I've gotten it to a point where like basically like they used to be my big toes used to be pretty far apart, and now it's a pretty close difference. So I'm excited for the barefoot.
Show us that mobility and lift your leg up. I want to see these bad boys.
There we go.
Okay.
They look a little clown shoeish just because of the wide toe box. Takes some getting used to. But, they're good. Try not to kick the microphone here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, cool. Nice. I actually got distracted working, but I was in the process of ordering a new pair of cleats today. I'm trying to see if I can have all-purpose cleats, but I might just end up getting some cheap soccer cleats, because I have debuted as a 4 and 5 year old kindergarten level soccer coach, and I've been running around in the mud. So I think I need some real footwear, and I can't seem to find the cleats I thought I had. So,
You get your cardio in if you're just constantly like running up and down the field to try and coach.
I try to demonstrate the drills. I mean, at this stage, we're not actually playing any games. It's more just like, here is an hour of getting energy out practice. We play, like red light, green light, but they're dribbling the soccer ball. We play freeze tag, where you have to kick the ball at the coaches. So it ends up being like the 3 coaches on like 15 kids kind of thing. And, we do a little bit of everybody rotate being goalie. We'll just kick at you, just fun, all basic. Just let's get the kids busy for an hour after it's 3 o'clock on Sunday. Yeah. It's 3 o'clock on Sundays. So,
good stuff.
Yeah.
Good stuff, man.
Yeah.
All righty, guys. Well, thank you for tuning into this episode of Working on the Dad Pod. Man, we got to rename that segment. We don't, but we're just going to keep, it's going to be a running bit. Thanks for tuning into this episode of Working on the Dad Pod. I'm Alex. He's Ethan. Reminder to like and subscribe and share with a friend, because we really appreciate it. And we will see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for working on the Dad Pod with us. Any resources that we mentioned during the show will be in the show notes. If you have questions, thoughts, or just want to talk with us, the best place is in the comments on YouTube. We're on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Threads at Working on the Dad Pod, and on Twitter at Working on Dad Pod. Following and subscribing is always appreciated. Please rate and review us. That helps get the show to new people. And if you know a dad who would enjoy our show, sharing it with them is a huge help to them and us. Have a great week.